Life Expansion After 50, live event Thursday, June 19th. Today I'm going to do some more running exercises. I don't know if you're aware, but I did pull a hamstring out sprinting, and I'm backing off on the sprinting, but still working on running. I'm going to use hills and more weight to start building up some muscle. One of the things, I talked about running a time that I had 5 years ago. Well, one of the challenges with that idea is that I am about 15 pounds heavier than I was then. So what I'm going to do is, I'm about 15 pounds heavier than I was then. So what I'm going to do is lose that 15 pounds, and meanwhile, instead of running for speed, which is what I was doing, which is how I pull the hamstring, I'm going to run for muscle, to build muscle and strength, and then I'll add speed later. So it was a little ambitious now that I know, and plus I want to commit to the footwork drills 2 to 3 times a week. So with that in mind, it just makes more sense to do it this way. So let's see how I'm doing. Yeah, let me pull it down a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. All right, so I haven't warmed up. I've just been setting stuff up. I got a little different setup today. I have a ladder here, which I'll do some ladder drills. And then I have my normal warm up drill here that I'll use. So I'll start with that. Saturday, I plan to do a time drill on a basketball court, and I'll set the cones up on the court, and that way you can come up with the same exact setup, and I'll start timing myself. It'll just be something a little bit fun, add some accountability to it. And then today, what I'll be talking about is the other part of that homeostasis and allostasis. That's what I started talking about last week. So let me just get to warming up here. I want to zoom in on this thing. It's a little bit far away. So I'm trying out a new camera. And because I have it on tracking, I should be able to so this setup I have now is a little bit much for the weekday, but I wanted to test it out before Saturday. All right, so here's the warm-up. Just this typical starting off, going kind of slow, working on the precision, getting my feet to go inside the cones. If you watch the earlier videos, I used to do it behind because I didn't have the precision and balance to go in between the cones. Now I am on a bit of a hill here, but we'll figure that out. Pick up the speed a little bit. I'll have to have my back to you to switch it up. So I'm going uphill on both sides. Big difference going uphill. Oh man, a little wire problem here. All right. So the same thing with the ladder, because it's facing up a little bit uphill. I'll have to have my back to you on the comeback. Still running the 6 pounds, whoops, in the vest. So last week I announced that I'll keep going. I'm stick with the 6 pounds for a while, but what I'll do is introduce the hill, going uphill. I also started doing a little bit of running in the morning uphill. All right, so this is not working out so good. The wind is messing with it. All right. Still struggling with that one. All right. So, doing a little bit different today. See, I've got the warm-up going on. Let me just set up my other screen. All right. Thanks for that patience on that. Just little technical difficulty stuff. Just so you know, so I record this while I'm going live. I also record it to edit so that I can post a clean version with edits and get rid of some of these pauses and stuff. So now, we were talking last time about homeostasis and allostasis. Homeostasis is the body wanting to get back to or making everything stable. So this is, think about plateaus. You lift weights and you hit a plateau, you're not progressing anymore. That's the body getting efficient. And the way I look at it is there's so many neurons. You have neurons to activate the new stuff, and then you have neurons to turn it into steady state. So we're always making a improvement, and then the body's constantly trying to get to steady state. So it makes sense if you're in an operational environment, but if you're in a project or development or innovation, we're going to have to keep pushing ourselves because we don't want that stability. And with so much VUCA going on, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, we're constantly making adjustments on the fly. And for that reason, it makes sense to keep the neurotransmitters going and to keep building on that muscle. All right, now I'm going to start. I'll do my normal 4-cone drill for a while, for a few runs. So we go back, taking it easy. Just want to work on the precision and the movement and introduce the hill. Now the allostasis, which is the other part of it, that's the part where the body's looking, the central nervous system is looking forward to determine if more demands are going to be placed or fewer demands. So if you have a sedentary lifestyle, we're communicating to the central nervous system that things are going to be easier moving forward and we don't need as much neurotransmitter. So the allostasis and what I'm doing is not to combat, but to complement the homeostasis. So while the homeostasis might stabilize, for example, I want that to happen to stabilize doing footwork drills 2 and 3 times a week. That stability is great. I like that efficiency. Lifting heavy, I like that efficiency. But to not have the plateaus, I have to keep mixing it up by changing, and that's going to keep the neurotransmitter flowing and being produced. And that's the point here. So I don't think you've seen me. I did this one a few Saturdays ago on a live. This is more of a running drill. So I start off running, then I sidestep, run, sidestep, and then run. So I'm finishing going uphill. Now, what I wanted to say about this homeostasis is this is life expansion after 50. And for the summer, I'll be overdoing it with the physical work. And because it's outside, it stays light longer. And then once we hit fall and winter, I'll start focusing on some of the other areas. But most of what we think is mental and thinking is actually physiological. So a lot of our mental cognition is actually physiological cognition. And this is why I'm working on the footwork drills and talking about neurons, because the same neural pathways that enable me to do this are the same neural pathways, not the same ones, but the same concept that allow me to talk. The same ones that create what a lot of people think of as thought. But there's a difference between mental consciousness, that kind of thinking, and habitual thinking that's coming from the network of neurons. The network of neurons is not thinking. What's coming from the neural pathways are signals. The same way there's signals for my muscles, these are signals that, think of it as energy going through the neural pathway. The signal comes across as what we think of as a thought, but it's not a thought, it's an association. The same way ChatGPT is not thinking, or AI is not thinking, it's making associations. It knows how the words were used and how they're normally used and grouped together, and that's why it's able to respond when you're talking about the past. It's more difficult for it to come up with concepts when you're talking about the future, especially if you're off into infinite possibilities. Now what we're doing, what we're applying, the novelty, intention, precision, balance, progression, explosiveness, and struggle on the edge of ability, I've said it's a strong correlation with deep practice. And deep practice is how we activate neural pathways, but it's also how we wrap neurons with myelin. So as we wrap the neurons with myelin, they fire faster, stronger, more accurately. So if you're in sales, you may recall where they were always having you do role play. See, the best practices use this neuroscience because it's what worked. It's just that the brain scanning tools that have become available in the last few decades make it possible for us to figure out why. So role playing is very important in sales. I would say that you could probably get close to that if you just practice out loud. See, that role playing is forcing us to use our mouth to talk, and we're also thinking, and we're also making associations. But if you speak and you practice your presentation out loud, that's better than not doing anything at all. And it's far better than just thinking about it. The more you can speak, this is why teaching is such a powerful, why I do this, such a powerful way of learning, because when you teach, you're forcing new associations. Now, what I'll be doing is starting to work on my form. So it's probably why I got hurt too. When you're sprinting, as you go faster, you want to have your foot up tighter. My foot is not up tight enough, and if I'm kicking it out, it's actually landing, and I'm working against myself because I first have to, almost like stopping myself rather than having my feet go underneath me. If you watch sprinters towards the end of the 100 meters, it's like their legs are wheels, they're just spinning. And so that's what I'm working on this last step. I didn't do it the last 2 times, I actually forgot. But normally when I do this setup, I'm working on the start. Right now, I'm more working on form. And that deep practice, activating neural pathways, and for me, I'm having to wrap some neurons with myelin because I've never been trained sprinting. I did some speed work with a group called Acceleration once, but that wasn't the same thing. I wasn't trained like a person who ran track would be trained. So I have to wrap some of my neurons with myelin. And that's going to help me with the neural pathways. I was talking about how neural pathways, it's the same neural pathways, the same concept of what I'm doing with the footwork drills. The same thing applies with what we think of as thinking. And as I said, usually it's not thinking. One of the ways that you can tell is if it comes in real quick, if the idea comes in real fast, if the answer comes in real fast, it's probably more likely associations. It's not a perfect way, but it's a good start, because the subconscious, which is actually the network of neurons, has a reaction time of about 1/4 of a second. The conscious mind has a reaction time of more like 1/2 a second. So if it's coming in fast, it's pretty good bet that it's associations from habit to habitual thinking. The other way you can tell, if it's repeated thoughts. If you're continuing to have the same repeated thought, that's another way that you can probably make a bet. And this is not about scientifically knowing which one is which. It's about you learning the difference, because it makes a big difference if your idea is coming from past associations versus really thinking something through, especially if you're working on a new project or an innovation. If you're working into the field of infinite possibilities and you're bringing in baggage and habits and thoughts from the past, chances are you're going to be making some mistakes. And this is why it's hard in organizations to create new projects, to reinvent, because everyone's wanting to stay back. They don't know that they're doing this, but the habit is the comfort zone. Said another way, when I'm working out here with my conscious mind, which is much slower, 50 bits per second on the conscious, 11 million bits per second on the subconscious, so it's much faster. So we feel out of sorts, we feel off, where we don't have our timing, we don't feel like we're being smart, it's taking too long to come up with ideas, and we want that old comfort zone, and we want to get back to what we're used to. And this is why why change management is so important, and why it can't be an afterthought. It has to be done along the way, because you have to bring people along, or you're not going to get the best thinking for the future. You're going to get the thinking that's kind of pulling you back into the past. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about the homeostasis and allostasis, because this stabilizing is the same way. You know, you may think about, you get a new job and you're gung-ho, you have all these ideas, and 3 or 4 weeks later, you're sort of in a rut that you don't want to be in. And that's that stability, that's that stabilizing. One of the things you can do if you take on a new job, take on a new position, is clear it with your boss that you want to go and meet some of the department heads, division heads, some of the C-suite heads, depending on what your position is. In other words, you want to sit down with his or her peers just to get a sense of what their priorities for the year and to open up the lines of communication. If they have a problem with that, then it's one of those things where you just, you think of it as planting a seed, you come back later. Sooner or later, there's going to be a relationship that you have with somebody that makes it a little bit easier to facilitate that. But this is a powerful concept, because you're going to keep learning. Think about it, you're going to keep learning and keep moving forward with the neural pathway activation. Yeah, it's kind of hard to remember to pick up the feet like that, but at least I'm remembering, and that's the start. So hopefully you're able to see some of the connection here, that with 100 billion neurons, it makes sense to understand how the neurons work, how they how they enable us to function, because they control a lot more than just the footwork. They control a lot more than just our speaking. Now, let's see. I feel like I'm going a little light on the drills here. Do something here. I'll go. A little mixed up there going uphill, especially with the weight, makes a difference. If you hear that yelling over there, that's a kids soccer group. They may be practicing the same days I was coming out here to go live. Well, it's almost a half hour, so wrap this up. This Saturday, I'll be doing a piece on the emotional area. So remember, this is all coming out of the 7 fitness areas: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, relationship, financial, relationship, professional, financial. The mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional is what's in our control. In order to have agency and personal leadership, we have to have mastery over those 4. And then the relationships, professional, financial, those are things that are controlled by other people. And so we're going to have the agency here so that we can get what we want over here. This is be, do, have instead of a have, do, be. So the last few weeks, I did 2 weeks on mental, and then I did a Saturday on physical, and then I did last Saturday on spiritual, and then this Saturday coming up, planning on doing it at 8 o'clock Pacific time, we'll do emotional. And if you get the chance, if you want to, because I'll start going live inside the Facebook group, Life Expansion After 50, in the actual group. And that way you'll be able to post your own activities. It's the idea. Yeah, I can tell. Doesn't feel like it, but I can tell my legs are getting shot. The other thing I'll start doing is posting these events earlier, and you can actually come in and join on stage. So I see, yeah, so that it's in the comments. Yeah, you can click that link and then you can join and we can have a conversation, and I'll extend the time. But typically I'm just going to do this for about 30 minutes. 20-minute footwork drill is enough for what I'm doing, which is activating neural pathways. Again, it's not about building or developing muscle. It's not about going to failure. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I'm finding is that if I do push too hard, it puts me in a deficit and I lose some of the benefit, and it's harder to do the work the next day. So I'm having to manage my output to maintain that, to stabilize, right? To stabilize. So we'll talk to you on Saturday if you're there.